Alright, I was planning to go out into town, but now it's starting to sprinkle a little bit of rain, so it's just as well that I didn't, I guess. Of course, maybe it won't amount to much. It's hard to say. Sometimes we just feel a few drops and then it stops too, so it may not be anything really. Okay, hold on here. We'll put these here for now. There we go. Yeah, we'll put them right there. Yeah, I'm going to take the propane tank into town. Just put my shopping bags and things away for now so they don't get wet if it does start to pour. If it really starts to pour, then I'll back into the tent is what I'll do in my chair. Rocky's over that way, laying on the ground having a sleep. Anyway, I saw something yesterday that was put out by a YouTuber who I watch. He goes by the handle Common Sense Carl. He's a Canadian, really good guy, very conscientious, a lot of common sense, like he says, common sense, you know. He does his homework, and he mentioned something that got me to thinking, and I just want to expound upon it a bit and to add my own thoughts to it. So, and this is in no way to plagiarize anything that Common Sense Carl has put out there. This is just me taking what he said and now talking about my thoughts on what he said, is all. Now, he did say not to quote him on these numbers because he didn't write them down. He was going by memory. But basically, what he was driving at is how many homeless people there are in this country compared to how many members of the armed forces there are, you know. And he said that roughly, again, he said not to quote him on the numbers, or not, I guess not to hold him to it or whatever, because he didn't write them down. He was just going by memory. But he said that roughly 64,000 members, there's roughly 64,000 members of the armed forces, roughly, based on what he can remember from his research. Now, of those, he said that roughly 34,000 are ready to go. Like if we needed an army to be active in the country today, we could have roughly 34,000 sets of boots on the ground today. The rest aren't ready to deploy yet, or aren't ready to deploy right now. Anyway, like I say, those were just rough figures because he didn't have them written down. And he did say not to quote him on them, and I guess I just did quote him on them. So if he sees this and he's upset, I apologize. I'm making it clear, though, that he was going by memory and not exactly certain, which he admitted. But still, roughly, that'd be what it would be, roughly, you know. And anyway, here's the thing. Our Prime Minister keeps our army small. But if anybody listening to this recalls when the Arab Spring happened a few years ago, when people started to rise up in different Middle Eastern countries, there was one country in particular, and I can't remember which country it was now, but there was one country where the army that was sent in to put the people down who were rising up actually sided in with the people. And they helped the people overthrow the sitting government of the day in that country. Now, I think that our Prime Minister has taken a good lesson from that. For one thing, he hasn't been very kind to our army or to our veterans. There's an incident a few years back during a town hall type meeting, where a veteran stood up and chastised the Prime Minister because he was having a tough time getting any help. He had issues related to his service to this country, and he needed help. He had asked the government for help because of his injuries and so on, and his trauma. And the Prime Minister, when I told the Prime Minister the story, the Prime Minister said, "You ask too much." Well, I mean, that man didn't say that when he was asked to serve this country. He didn't say, "Oh no, you ask too much." And the result of his service to this country is that he is now injured and traumatized, and he needs our help. And our Prime Minister says, "You ask too much." The Army's been taking an awful beating, just like the rest of us have from this guy. And so I don't imagine our Prime Minister wants a big army. Canadians are kind of a ballless bunch in general, but even the most timid and docile dog will eventually bite you if you torment it enough. And the people of Canada have been badly tormented these last few years. And I think the Prime Minister recognizes that he's sitting on a powder keg right now, and he doesn't want a huge Canadian army that might turn on him. The thing of it is, though, because he's a globalist and so on, he can call on the United Nations Army, which is a world army. And he can call on them either to defend Canada or to defend himself against Canadians. And I think he's more concerned about an internal revolt than he is about any external threat. And the thing of it is, a UN army has no loyalty to Canada or to Canadians. A UN army has no loyalty to any specific country. A UN army is a globalist army. A UN army is loyal to the UN, to the organization of the UN. A UN army isn't loyal to Canada or the Canadian people or the American people or the Mexican people or the British people or the French people or the Australian people or any other people. The UN army, the UN troops, they're loyal to the UN. They're a globalist army. Justin Trudeau's a globalist. He demonstrated during the trucker convoy protest how he could just bring in UN troops, which he did. UN troops came in and they beat those protesters with sticks, fired rubber bullets and tear gas canisters at them, just brutalized them. There were protesters down on their knees praying for those guys that were beating them, and they were getting beat across the head with sticks by those UN troops. So Trudeau knows he can call them in if he needs them. And they'll do as they're told. They'll do whatever the UN tells them to do. And so he don't need to risk his own army turning on him, And the thing is, the other part about having a big sitting army, a huge standing army in the country, is that it's a patriotic statement. It's a nationalist thing. Because if you have a huge standing army, what you're saying to the world is, if anybody comes in here to our country with ill intent, we're prepared to deal with that. We will deal with any threat that's presented to us from outside. And so you want to think twice before you do that. You see, that's a very nationalistic, very patriotic, very nationalistic thing. Like I say, Trudeau's a globalist. His loyalty is not to Canada or to Canadians. His loyalty is really to Klaus Schwab and to the UN and different outfits like the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, and so on. That's where his loyalties are. He has no interest in really in serving Canadians, if serving Canadians would cause the globalist agenda to take a back seat. He'll always put the globalist agenda ahead of the Canadian people and of what's good for Canada. And so, again, the last thing he would want is a huge standing army, which is an expression of patriotism, an expression of nationalism. He's trying to destroy nationalism, not to perpetuate it. And he certainly doesn't want an army that might turn on him. And the thing is, those words that he said that evening at that town hall meeting to that veteran, when he told that veteran, "You ask too much," those words may come back to bite him in a big way. You know, I mean, the army in Canada may be loyal to Canada, and it may be loyal to the Canadian people, but it's not necessarily loyal to him as an individual. And he's already shown that he's not loyal to it, and to those men and women who serve within it as individuals. He's shown that he's not loyal to those people. And so, anyway, those are just some thoughts I have on the issue.